Okay, so I began a new franchise. As it happens, somehow this franchise passed me by, despite being a huge one. There's loads of them. For some reason, they're not quite an hour and a half long, like like the average movie, but there's still loads of them. So I suppose sort of comparable to American Pie in this sense. There's also loads of those. But somehow I've never heard of this before. It is called Eating Out, and I don't know. It's a strange one. I liked it better than American Pie, though. I think not too much more, to be fair. But I don't know. American Pie had slightly different sort of and constant. It focused on different things. I mean, it was still fairly formulaic, so it wasn't exactly the most original thing ever, but it was slightly more, ever so slightly more complex than, you know, sex comedies like American Pie. The script that is, the script was, I mean, American Pie is so direct and blunt and, unsubtle, just like the couple of another gay movie were really, and I cannot really say they're anything special. They're fairly similar movies in that aspect. This one I thought it was a bit strange. I mean, it was still straightforward, but it did have some twists and turns. And the script was, you know, at one point a bacteria was mentioned. You know, uh, you don't get bacteria mentioned in American Pie. You know, it's not like it doesn't make a movie. I suppose it's not funny per se by itself, but it's slightly more complex than those others. Really, um, they tend to rely a lot on simplicity, shall we say? This one didn't do that much. It was still a fairly sort of staple rom-com, with lots of relationships, triangles, and such. But it was still a sort of, I haven't personally, seen this specific thing done before. This sort of weird, convoluted thing. So it wasn't that that derivative to me. Um, no, but and the little bits were sort of interesting, I suppose. Um, but the only problem I see is that it it's whoever did the casting seemed to think that they only needed to cast one type of actor really, and they all look fairly similar. That's the problem. They all had this sort of similar build and such. Um, what's positive though was the music. I think the music was interesting. It was electronic, had these sort of beats, and I liked it. Yeah, but the female actress though was quite something as well. How she navigated the whole thing. She did display a range of emotions. I think that's more than like I don't remember. There were female actresses in American Pies, obviously, but uh, they were all fairly mild, fairly muted, and they all invariably played in some sort of bands. I don't know why they always do the same thing over and over. This is, of course, the first one I ever watched, so I don't know if they just copied the same thing in the rest of the series. They might as well do, in which case this would be the only original. But so far, so good, I guess. In terms, I mean, it's not really, wasn't very funny or anything. Wasn't very comical. Like I may, maybe I smiled a few times, but I only really laughed out loud, maybe just half a laugh out. And it wasn't really. I mean, I found there's some many other things are much funnier. Stand up is much funnier usually. Some of the movies are much funnier, but as a rom com goes, rom coms don't tend to be that funny. that's the problem. As far as rom-coms go, so this wasn't too bad, but it wasn't too funny either. I still seen better, but it, let's just say that wasn't too bad. Um, I don't know if it made a lot of money, considering as a franchise probably did, yeah. So yeah, apparently it made 3 times as much money as was spent making it, which is quite something considering. It wasn't obviously very well critically received, but I don't think any sex comedy ever is made for critics nowadays. I don't even know why critics watch it. This is not supposed to be for critics now, is it? It's just whatever it is. I mean, it's one of those, it's not at all meant to be critical. So I watched the sequel to Eating Out. I don't normally watch sequels right after, but I thought why not? And it actually happened to be funnier than the original. Actually, at least I seem to find it funnier. The ending obviously was funnier. At first, I admit I was apprehensive about the thing, but I suppose they built it up to have that sort of ending. So I didn't mind in the end, I suppose, but still a bit. I suppose sort of walking on eggshells when such is done. Obviously, it's not something that is done at all in another game movie or the sequel, but at any rate, it had a great ending. I guess one could say. I mean, can't deny that, right? Putting the box near the room and as soon as she opens, it explodes on her. That is funny. That is funny. So that's definitely a funnier scene than anything that's ever happened so far in either the first movie or the second. Besides that one, so it's that specific moment in the second. 'Cause otherwise, it's mostly not too funny. It's just people going around trying to just suppose some supposed bit of art. Whereas in the original we get the piano, in the sequel we get the art apparently. But that's not funny itself. It doesn't make it automatically funny or anything. Um, so, but otherwise it wasn't too bad either, just like the first. But it's still sort of mediocre in a way. I mean, just a single scene doesn't make it, you know, uh, really funny or a good movie overall by itself. It just doesn't. But obviously, like many other, like the sequel and another game movie as well, they changed the one of the actors at least. Seems like, and I don't normally watch movies straight off one after another, but as it happens, I did now because they're short, and so I guess one could say it's a bit confusing after watching the first one, but it doesn't really matter really. In the end, it seems like it just whatever he blended in. It's not like I keep track of. One doesn't keep track of names anyway. One keeps track. Well, that's the thing. So actually, isn't it? But otherwise, yeah, it doesn't. But it was kind of sort of like a flip, wasn't it? Whereas in the original was a straight guy who wanted to find a female. So yeah, this one is the other way around. But yeah, the ending sort of makes up for it, I suppose. I don't know. It wasn't too bad. Same sort of problem with the original. So there's a lot of same types. A lot of you know Mark and the other guy there, and they're all very muscly, shall we say, and it's a bit boring. So yeah, but otherwise, I mean, I personally watch these not for the sex, but for the comedy, and there usually is more comedy than sex, but I don't know. It was a bit of both, but there wasn't that much comedy either. Like honestly, I think even though the comedy is sort of mediocre, what's available in like a movie and a sequel are a bit more than this. I mean, it's much more outright. Obviously, it's much more explicit. But the sequel as well did something similar to the sequel. Um, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, to be fair, most sex comedies have this sort of comedy, this sort of thing, really. Even American Pie, it's all very, very similar, really. You watch one, you watch all kind of thing. With this specific thing, though, the box is transported, and I haven't personally seen it anywhere else. That was a great setup, sort of, for what it was, for the context it was in. Pretty good setup, and then how it ended and everything. Yeah, yeah, but not too bad, I suppose. Um, so it was funny, but if only it was more consistently so, like this, I suppose it would have been better, sort of. Yeah. So the third eating out was supposed to be mediocre. I mean, most of sex comedies are sort of mediocre, to be fair. So, but it was something. I mean, the problem is that they're not often too funny and not too romantic either. So, not really sure what they're aiming for often. Um, Obviously, the beginning of the film, movie, the funeral, they seem to want to go really far there. Having sex in a funeral is quite far. Obviously, it's a purported funeral, not an actual one, but you know, um, I suppose so. They did go. I mean, for the factor that they don't usually have that in this franchise, so it's kind of an oddity, really. And yeah, other than that, there's nothing else really. They're setting up some online account pretending to be someone else isn't very unique. It's what people do, I guess. Not too funny either. It's not normally funny, I guess. But yeah, there's really not much to say else. I mean, it's one of those series, I guess, that bit strange. And, the affairs sometimes go for very long, but yeah, um, I mean, it's not often that there's sex comedies that aren't as funny as American Pie, but I suppose this is kind of not as funny. It's just not. I mean, it's supposed to be a comedy, but really didn't have much comedy. So the fourth installment of Eating Out was kind of boring. I mean, they were obviously trying to mimic many other camp movies out there. Yeah, camp. Ironically. Well, I mean, most of them are, to be fair, as in cliched and such. But yeah, that's the problem when it comes to camp movies. Yeah, but this was an exception, really. I mean, I had seen the camp movie from American Pie recently, so I suppose I could sort of relate to that. That was the first in this side series. It's not the main American Pie series. Anyway, and yeah, it was fairly similar to that, obviously, as opposed to this thing with um people screwing each other. There's just that one guy in American Pie who always wants to screw others instead of metaphorically screw that is. So yeah, in terms of pranks and such, the camp in American Pie obviously had more. Uh, with regards to this one, and the only thing I can think of is at the end when he simply switched on the microphone for it's a very stereotypical thing. I've seen it elsewhere. No, I have no idea where, but I've seen it. So that's pretty much it, I guess. Oh no, there was another one here. There was the poison oak thing. Yeah. I don't know, but those are pretty much it. Other than that, it's just um an attempt, I guess, at uh, mischievous drama. I guess one could say. I don't know. It's it's very mild, so as opposed to others like the couple of so-called gay movie things. They're mm, they're sort of they are sort of more wild than American Pie, just a bit maybe. This sort of sits. I don't think Eating Out is as a franchise is as wild as even American Pie, let alone obviously another gay movie, which is even wilder than American Pie, I think, in my opinion. But yeah, the major problem I think with these sort of sex comedies, I think one can say, is the script mainly. I mean, the script is very. I mean, obviously it's a rom com, so rom coms normally have the greatest of scripts, or even many other things really. Very rare to get something that is, I thought that the acting, particularly at the beginning, was kind of wooden. Um, one doesn't expect incredible acting in these sort of movies, but it was quite. I mean, it was sort of like they were rehearsing, like they were later on, and um, I have no idea why at one point they started screaming for a bit, and then at another point they put their hands in their mouth. I have no idea. I mean, do you think that was funny or what? I doubt actors really trained doing that, right? I seriously doubt it. I have no idea what it would be for if they do, but I doubt that happens. Seriously doubt. Yes. So, uh, but I just as I said, everything is sort of a mild version of American Pie, pretty much. This obviously has more in common with American Pie than gay movie has. And, um, all these movies are sort of, I mean, they're what they are. But you know, if if you go really all out like another gay movie does, it's something, right? At least they decided to go all out. Whereas with this, clearly they decided to have milder things happening, but not too mild in terms of the sex. Honestly, sometimes they just go on for too long. I mean, I'm watching movies, not porn, so I don't know why they just keep on going for so long. You know, like yeah, I, American Pie does go on for but just a bit, but I don't think it goes on for so long. I mean, most movies do not. You know, some 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 other movies, all kinds of movies have sex scenes, but they don't generally go on for so long. Obviously, some movies decide to just have, two characters meeting up on the bed, the chair, and then you just cut to something else, not, having no scenes at all. But this really kept going, like it's some sort of, I'm not sure you could even call it softcore. I mean, they really went. Ironically, I don't think anything explicit was shown, but it was shown in other areas. But anyway, it's so other than that, though, it's still mild. So it doesn't have the comedy potential that another gay movie had. A couple of movies there, they were slightly different. Well, but this is really otherwise fairly mild. But I mean, if you're going to have a mild movie, they're just like most movies are after all. sort of mild dramas, right? Most movies are, as opposed to either sci-fi or horror or um, most movies are mild drama. Well, I don't know about most, but you know, drama is usually mild at any rate, unless big things happen, obviously, in the drama. But this is the thing. It was mild, and yet it wasn't at some points due to the display of sex. And as I said, it went on for too long as well. But the point is, they should decide it really to. They, they should have decided whether to either just go thoroughly mild, and so not have ultra long sex scenes, which is just too repetitious. That's the main problem. Um, Obviously, at the end of for this one, yeah, they just broke out in an orgy. Now, it's not too different. It's not very different from most other mild drama, except this is the problem. It's not doesn't have an amazing script or anything like some drama does, and so the drama is kind of stilted at best. And that's the problem. And so whereas they didn't decide to go all out for the comedy, right? Clearly they didn't, as opposed to American Pie, which at least tries. Not saying it succeeds. American Pie is very samey as well, sort of. So it does have a lot of the same pranks and such. Obviously, literally in the camp movie of American Pie, they literally copied another character from previous movies and played by another person, but still very much copied. So you know, that has the same problem. I think all long-running series have this problem. Obviously, maybe another game movie it wasn't exactly long running. It only had a couple, so I guess it didn't run into this problem because of that. So a couple of movies are fairly themselves. But the the difference is that even if it didn't have genuinely amazingly funny comedy, at least it decided to go in this certain direction of an extremity in the sense, the direction of over the top comedy in this sense, as opposed to this one, which relies more on drama. But then the drama isn't well scripted, so it's a bit of a dilemma. You should either movies should either go the sensible drama route or the over the top comedy if that's what they're aiming for. This was a bit of both, I guess, but it didn't really, yeah, didn't quite succeed in any of them, in my opinion. Yeah, it wasn't too funny. The funniest bit was, but then again, it's very much a rehash of many other things. The bit where the microphone was switched on. It didn't have though. I think the funniest scene so far in all Eating Out movies was in the second one, where the door was opened and splash. Because somehow, even though obviously it was scripted and people uh, planned it, but the way it happened was still very funny. Um, you know, I don't think the first one had funnier moments than that, so it was still sort of like this one in terms of you just had interpersonal awkwardness practically. The first one did. Yeah, the third one, th- the third one, um, yeah, wasn't too bad, but I don't think it was very funny either. Problem is, but yeah, this one anyway. The fourth, clearly steam is running out. So this is clearly where steam starts running out, in my opinion. The third one it retained the steam just a bit, but the fourth one is a bit of a just I don't know. They probably did watch the American Pie camp movie and kind of tried to copy it a bit, but barely did. They should have put more pranks if they wanted to do it. And yeah, sure enough, Bandcamp was in 2005, so that's 6 years before this movie was made. So I don't know. I mean, it's not like Bandcamp was much funnier, but it was in a way, slightly more funny. Not too much, just slightly. I mean, it had disgusting stuff as well, so I personally don't enjoy, that too much. But they all have their thing. So at least this eating out didn't have as much. American Pie is can be disgusting. Sometimes they seem to think that this cast is comedic. It's really not. Now the most disgusting bit in this eating out movie was where they somehow zoomed into her mouth. I'm not sure why they did that. I couldn't care less what the inside of her mouth looks like. Somehow they seem to think that it's crucial to depict in such a movie. I'm not sure if they honestly thought it was funny. Clearly not as awful as I think it was the third American Pie, where they actually went so far as to think that feces would be funny to smear, and any movie that does that is just so not funny. Yes, so as it happens here, it seems like I think I watched both. Yeah, both 4 American Pies and 4 Eating Outs so far. I've caught up with American Pie. Obviously, American Pie has more than 4 or 5. Yeah, so many more. It's ridiculous. So, Presents itself has how many? 4. Yeah, 4. And another one about to be released. Wait, not 4. 5. 5 already released. No, not 4 released, but 5 about to be released. And the American Pie franchise itself has wow, yeah, well, it has 4, so actually not 10, but nearly. So in total, including the one really supposed to be released this year, there's 9. That's American Pie for you. So 4 more than Eating Out, because there wasn't a spin-off series for Eating Out. Yeah. So you got Naked Mile, Beta House, Book of Love, and American Reunion to watch. And then it's released. Girls Rules, apparently it's called. I mean, I watch these mainly for the comedy. Whatever little comedy there is. Obviously, it's usually awkward comedy. Yeah, it is comedy, so. Um, and they don't usually have too much, but I don't mind it anyway. I just watch it. It's mindless fun when fun can be had. Maybe not in some instances, on some scenes, but sometimes you still get some fun in most movies, I think. So yeah, great. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, I shall close this now. I mean, it was what it was really. It wasn't too entertaining, but I don't mind really. Um, I'll watch the fifth one as well at some point, and so that would be the franchise done for now. No likelihoods. Yeah, so the fifth one was made in 2012, which is 8 years ago. So not possibly not going to release anymore, but who knows? Anyway, Uh, yeah. So there we go. So, with regards to the last movie in the 1890 series, I mean, yeah, it's not really that much different from any other. I just wish they also thought they'd include a few more laughs, really. I mean, you know, I watched this for the comedy mainly, and there's very little. I can count them on my fingers. There's, when when they introduced the Harry Potter vibrator, yeah, that's a good prop. And then she started it up while they were having sex on top of the bed, and they thought it was the air conditioner. So I think that's pretty much the highlight of the movie. Which I mean, it wasn't bad, but there's nothing else really. I wish they just included more laughs. Everything else is pretty mundane. There's no sense of plot either. Yeah, so whatever really. In the sense that it has even less comedy than any of the American Pie movies. In the sense, I don't know what this is. Series as a whole was aiming for. I mean, they're all fairly similar movies, so I guess they had this similar sort of thing in mind. But really, the funniest moment still remains in the second movie when they wheeled in that portable toilet, and it's not like it was a an original thing to do, but in this case, it was the funniest moment in the series, which is a pity because that was 3 movies ago, and they really haven't done much more since then that could even possibly compete with its comedy. In the sense, then, to compare it with others in the same sort of sense of a movie, I mean, it is supposed to be somewhat like American Pie, but it doesn't end up being because it doesn't have as many uh, you know um, jokes and pranks. It does sure have the sex. It's quite but not really the pranks. So I don't know. It's missing something. Obviously, it's not just sex either. That would be otherwise it would have been just porn. But it just has mild drama as usual. Most of these movies have mild drama. That kind of drama that people do not react badly to. So it's not, I don't know what people react badly to. So but it's just mild, really. It's nothing outstanding, nothing incredibly interesting. It's you know couples coming together, couples not coming together, just so slight jokes and such, but it's not really very like even a rom com, any other rom com usually on average I think is could be at least funnier than this, even though rom coms aren't really that funny. And it is sort of a rom com. It's just a strange rom com, I guess. I mean, some rom coms can be strange, but mostly I think are realistic, I suppose. I don't know how realistic this is. This is it is more realistic than like a couple of another gay movies. But that's the thing. I mean, that's obviously what it's similar to, but it's it doesn't have as much laughs. I think. I mean, in the sense that had more comedy. It still had sexual stuff, but not. Uh, that's not the precise uh, focus. Mm, Whereas it was more here, I think. Mostly the drama was, and I just wish that it had more comedy. It's a pity that the other, yeah. It's not that there was a lot of comedy in those other couple of movies that it was still funnier than any of these movies, yeah. Except perhaps as mentioned the cubicle scene. Yeah, so it's unfortunate there's only a couple. Um, yeah, I just wish they just did more comedy and anyway, yeah, I'm repeating myself now, so yes, that's it. The sea was nice to look at though, just that's pretty much it, just the sea. Yeah, yeah, there we go. Hmm.